So with Mr. T, we are going to warm up with some leave-its today. So leave-its, for example, are things that are always off limits for your dog. I'm just going to do a couple find-its as I'm blabbing, and then we're going to go into working with some of the trash items. So some folks have done a leave-it, for example, where they've taken a dog kibble or a dog treat or maybe even a dog toy. And there's all different ways to do it, but this is the way that I find makes sense to me and my dogs. So I find that sometimes we make things sometimes very gray, and that gets confusing. So I like to make it very distinct, where leave-its for my guys means that it's always off limits, no matter what the dynamic. So if I'm choosing something to be a leave-it item, it should be something that will for later always still be a leave-it item. So if, let's say, we were practicing with dog treats or dog food, we told our dog leave it, and then we plop it on the floor and then release the dog to go eat it, that would be a situation where your leave it has now been acceptable to go explore, touch, or even consume. Then later, let's say you got in the habit of feeding your pup for every leave it item. You tell them to leave it, you put a piece of kibble down, you let them go grab it. The problem with that scenario is that at times, oh good, you found your bone, nice job. So that's a very nice bone. So let's say your babes have gotten in the rhythm of thinking leave it means hold on until you've been told to go grab it. Let's say, for example, your pup's ability to hold back is maybe not as great at times. So let's say you drop pills, you drop something that would be, again, toxic for the dog. You maybe broke glass by accident and it's nearby and the puppy's heading towards it. The problem with leave it and then allowing the puppy to go investigate or explore it and then also potentially consume it or play with it is that now at times when you've said leave it, it means later you're going to also be able to enjoy it or check it out. So if your puppy has gotten in that type of rhythm, then they might sort of go right on by and then go and grab the leave it item and then go put it in their mouth. Of course, that could be detrimental if, of course, you spilled pills or something dangerous. So with my guys, I like to have a leave it be always off limits. If you wanted to try with food or a toy or with a chew or something, and you're working on impulse control, like having your puppy hold back and then releasing them to go grab it, that's where I would recommend a wait behavior. They wait for a moment, you have the item off to the side, and then you release the pup to go retrieve the thing. That's how I would work the waiting and then going and grabbing the item. So when we go to practice, we're going to grab some no-no items, as I like to call them, and these would be trash items. So it could be a wrapper. It could be things from outside that would be considered unsafe for him to play with or try to gnaw on. So I have a bit of paper products. I have a bottle. I have some like a wrapper of a previous like a cough drop package. So when you're practicing, if your babe tends to be a gulper and they try to swallow things whole, I know I had mentioned previously, I would recommend checking out the toy exchange game and also getting your puppy to realize that letting go is not a negative scenario. Also make sure that your pup is well versed. I find this to be immensely helpful. So if you do have an oh no moment where the puppy got too close to the leave it, and let's say they grabbed the sock, they grabbed that household item, you could get your puppy's attention and go right into a find it. And since that's been so reinforcing and so positive for them, you could then ask for a find it behavior. They're probably going to spit out the original, again, leave it item or no item, and then go and do the find it while you go and pick up the item that was off limits. So I'm going to get Mr. T's leash back on. I'll maybe move his bone out of the bubble for now. I'm just going to toss it off to the side. He might go try and retrieve it. But ready? He's like, no, I really would rather chew on my bone right now. So obviously, again, there's moments where your puppies would rather do other things. We might do, again, a little find it. So that way Mr. T gets a little chance to take a little break. And then I'm just going to go ahead and move the item out of range for just a moment. Then we'll bring him back to his little bone in a little bit. So I have my trash items waiting up here on the shelf. And I'm going to go ahead and leash up my little man. So for Mr. T, if you're going to go ahead and practice this at home, I'd recommend to set up your trash items prior to coming out and working with your puppy. So like, let's say, for example, you're ready with your puppy, but you're holding the item. I sometimes like to get them a little distracted doing something else off to the side. And then I'm going to toss out my trash. So I have that plastic bag that has a few older acorns in it that are technically broken and a little bit sort of more powder right here. So I'm going to go leave it. And if Mr. T doesn't respond, let's say there's this tension, yes, give him a chance to try figuring it out. If, let's say, he goes right back to it and he's very taut in the gear, you can walk down your leash, then regain your puppy's attention, and then gain their focus there. So if you're finding you're repeating your cue or you're asking over and over for the signal that or the behavior you were hoping for, I would highly recommend, we're just doing the pickup from the earlier little find it, is I would recommend to remind yourself, don't say things over and over. If your puppy doesn't understand the behavior, the skill set, repeating yourself won't make it any clearer. If anything, they might start to think all we ever do is blab, and the blabbing has no direction, so why bother checking in while the person is chatting? So I'm going to go ahead, and here's my no-no item over here. It's again that plastic bag. I would approach where my puppy notices, and I go, leave it, and then Teddy. If, let's say, Mr. T is like, no, I'm very intrigued. Notice how when I get him to disengage, I start adding distance away from the hard leave it item. So when in doubt, if your babe is having a rough time with this, start with items that are benign. So nothing that has an association. Like if they tend to eat socks and actually try to inhale them or swallow them whole, don't start off with socks. If your pup has a hard time with small items, I wouldn't go right into working with acorns if they've already almost had an obstruction with acorns. So you want to start off with things that are a distraction, and they would always be a leave it item, but nothing that's at the hardest end of the spectrum for difficulty. So again, here's my no-no item. We're going to approach enough where Mr. T notices the item. I'd go leave it and then feed for that disengagement. So in the beginning, you'll see that I add that distance. I only approach for him to notice it, and then I'd say leave it and feed for that. If there's moments where your puppy doesn't even hear the cue word because you didn't get to say it yet, but let's say they notice the distraction item and they instantly do a U-turn and come check in, I would feed them for those lovely moments of checking in with you. Because remember, if you see little glimmers of your puppy doing an aha moment, if you don't capture those scenarios, your babe may find there's very little value in trying anything that's even harder. So remember, you want to make it attainable where the behavior is something they could handle and therefore try it again. So now I'm going to bring him closer to the leave it item, where right now we're going to do a little drive-by, and right here I'd go leave it. And then if, let's say, there's no response, Teddy, yes. So I like to first try my leave it cue. If the puppy doesn't respond, try their name or the little kissy sort of noise that we use as our positive interrupter as a secondary way to regain focus from the puppy. So notice my leash is nice and relaxed. I'm not creating tension on the gear. I'm also feeding him throughout the loose leash walking. So right here as he notices the item, so I know it's kind of hard, I'm in the way, right there, yes. So I didn't even get to say the L word to leave the item be. But as Mr. T decided to come check in with me versus that no-no item, he got a paycheck for doing so. So these could also turn into automatic leave-its, which is where everything around them could be an anticipated leave-it unless told otherwise. So again, here's my trash. I'm going to go leave it. And let's say there's interest. Teddy, yes. Beautiful job. So in the beginning, remember, he doesn't know what the heck we're working on. So we want to make sure that we're showing him versus just yelling sort of again for him words that he has no idea what they mean. So if again, he's like your furry little exchange student, nice right there, beautiful. So we walked on by, feed him for that. So if he's your furry little exchange student who doesn't know what's expected of him verbally, culturally, or physically, try to think what motivates your pup, and most of them are very food driven. You're going to use your food to teach and explain sort of what you'd prefer versus getting into trouble for failing. So right here I'd go, leave it, Teddy. He's like, hold on, I hear funny noises in the building. Yes, and feed for that. So I'm going to drop out another little leave it item, and I'm going to try to approach it from a different angle so you guys can see a little bit more in front. So that way, as he's practicing, we can do it from another angle so you guys can see him working it versus me being in the way. So paper tends to be a very exciting culprit for most. I'm going to toss a little snack over there while I'm dropping the leave it item off in the distance. So, and I might even just go ahead and pick up my other leave it so I can just work with one item at a time. Two, remember that if there's certain household items that are hard for your puppy, start off, as I mentioned, he's like, no, now I've noticed the paper towel. Start off with items that are comfortable for you to use, that are big enough that are not choking hazards. Mummy is practicing leave-its, which means to leave the thing alone. Ebba was just wondering why I'm throwing paper on the floor. So with Mr. T, we're going to do it from this side so you guys can see him practicing. So right here, there's the no-no. I'm going to go leave it. Teddy. Yes, nice check-in. Well, my lovey, I only brought 3, so you ate them all. Ebba wanted more of her cheese snack, and she gobbled them all up. That's okay. I can bring you something else if you're still hungry. So right here, we're going to drive by the item. I'm going to go leave it. Yes, and feed for that. Super. All right. Well, 1 second, Ebba, can you give Mommy just a few minutes? Can you drink some of the juice, and I'll be right over? So again, for Mr. T, oh, I dropped one. He's like, hold on, lady, those ones, nope, not as cool. So I, again, would work on showing him the item from a distance where you can be successful. If your puppy is starting to get in the habit of, let's say you set up your leave-its, and your babe is always able to get to it, smell it, play with it, or put it in their mouth, you're actually teaching your puppy that leave it means ignore what you're trying to chat about off in the distance, and then just go do the thing you were thinking of doing. So if every time I say leave it, it's me squealing in the background saying, don't touch that, it's a leave it, and it's already in their mouth, I'm very much so confusing the puppy or the dog as to what the heck we're doing. So for Mr. T, I might get his attention first, show him all the cool stuff that he has to earn over on this end. And now we're going to go towards our no-no item, close enough where he will notice it. Yes. And I'm feeding him for being near the item and not responding to it, but instead checking in with me. Nice job, Mr. T. So again, I'm going to feed again. That's beautiful. And we're going to try a little pass. Ready? He says, lady, I'm getting exhausted from doing all these loop-de-loops. He says, I have teeny little legs, though he has normally a really good amount of energy. So I'm going to grab a little bit of a higher value. I know we try to mix in some of his kibble in as well, but I want to make sure that when the work is very difficult, that the paycheck is equivalent of that hard effort. So I'm going to go ahead and move towards my no-no item. Right here, I'm going to leave it. Yes. And notice how he kind of made the decision to check in after he heard the L word. Nice. And you'll see that typically I don't like to say the cue or my dog's name unless I'm actually looking for a behavior. Ready, Teddy? Okay, 1 second. I'll be right there, Hippo. So again, right here, we're walking by. Leave it. Yes. Good boy. Teddy. Ready? He's just hearing my little one singing, so of course he's getting a little distracted. So remember that for leave-its, you don't want to also sound, I always say it's like the possessed voice, where you get really feisty sounding or agitated or angry. If, again, you sound stern and scary to your puppy, they're not trying to, again, do this on purpose or to spite you or to get you agitated. A lot of times puppies and dogs will explore things with their mouths. Even if they could be dangerous, they have no idea. So if you do sound immensely spooky and overwhelming, all you're doing is teaching your puppy that at times you can go from being safe and friendly and comfortable to unsafe and scary and at times flustering. So your puppy's not learning that you don't like this behavior or that they're doing something wrong. What they are actually picking up on is that you can become aggressive at any point and scare them. So your relationship is actually going to become hindered and potentially break down because they don't understand you're mad because what they're doing is agitating you or could harm them. They're going to think you're mad because they're just nearby and hanging out with you. They will not understand that you're upset at what they're doing. They're going to think you're upset at them in general. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring Mr. T again back to that side. We're going to see if we can walk by that tissue. So right here, leave it. Yes. So notice how I don't sound crabby or scary or intimidating as I'm going by the item. Again, we might try from this side. And again, my leash is short enough. So right here, yes. If he shows a lot of interest, I would create more distance and try this from another stepping stone. He might also be getting to the point where he's getting a little bit tired, but he might also prefer a potty break again because he likes to do a couple little potties in between practice. So we'll release the beast, but you can see with the leave it items, he's doing a really nice job disengaging from the no-no items and finding value in ignoring the thing. So I'm going to plop it out of range. So again, he can't fail while I'm not ready to help him. But let's say your puppy did happen to grab the no-no item. Let's say, so for example, I'm maybe going to grab one of the things that maybe isn't too tricky for him. So let's say, for example, we're practicing, and I would recommend still on your gear to start. He's like, maybe it's snacks. So I'm going to do a little find it just to keep him busy. Then I'm going to plant the no-no item off to the side. But let's say, for example, here's my trash item, and oops, I got too close. My puppy grabs it. It's in their mouth. If your puppy has gulping trouble, I wouldn't start with something they could potentially fit into their mouth and try to swallow whole. Go with really large leave it items. So if they do grab it, it can't be a choking or a gulping scenario. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to approach way too close. My puppy is going to go right into checking out the item. Let's say he puts it in his mouth, which he's thinking about doing. Oh, he says, let's play with it. And let's say he grabs the item and he's playing with it. I'm not going to freak out. What I'm going to go into is a lovely little find it again. So if my puppy tends to always think when I grab something, it equals the end of fun, or I'm always taking the thing away, remember how I mentioned that exchange game earlier? You want your puppy to think that letting go of something equals an exchange and not confrontation. If I just go and take this out of my puppy's mouth with again, just me yanking it out of there, I will either turn my puppy into a potential gulper, or I'm going to add to the potential or even create the resource guarding we're trying to avoid. So remember, when in doubt for now, practice a lot of great exchanges with things he's allowed to have. So when the oh no moment happens with something that he's not supposed to have, he can then start to realize that letting go is okay and safe. So obviously there's my trash again. I don't want to turn this into a game where it's always grabbing trash, but I might go, okay, there's the trash. I'm going to go, Teddy, ready? Find it. And get him in the habit of disengaging from the no-no item. Hey, Ebba, 1 second. I'll be almost done. Give me a moment. So with our handsome guy, notice how quick he was able to disengage from the no-no item. If I turn this into the keep away game where I am chasing him for the item, he is going to start to associate this with grab something, and maybe now they pay attention to me and they give me more attention, even at times if it could be bad or, for example, negative attention from our perspective. He will then think, gee, if I grab something I'm not supposed to, from a little bit of his perspective, then they come to play with me and they play keep away. The problem with keep away, though, is then if your puppy ever were to get away from you and you started chasing them to try to catch them, you might create more of a running away situation when you need your puppy to be able to come into your space when, let's say, they're loose and they're not supposed to be. So definitely a lot of these behaviors and skill sets will build on each other. So definitely think about practicing the exchange game with things he's allowed to have, but make sure you're practicing leave-its with items that are, again, within his comfort range, safety, and then also where you can have it where you practice the skills before you need them. If you always wait for the oh no moment to happen and you're squealing leave it as it's already in his mouth, it's not a leave it. So definitely make sure to work through some of these skills before you need them in that moment. But we're going to give Mr. T a little break from these leave-its. He did a really nice job, and we'll work another couple skills.